Hello, and welcome back to the Thought Cloud podcast. Our goal with this conversation is to uncover a hidden gem that can inspire others along their academic journey. Our guest today is Ananth Veluvali. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
I love it. All right, first time's a charm. Ananth was recently accepted into Stanford as an undergraduate. This is a huge accomplishment. I think that they have the lowest acceptance rate in the nation, maybe that or Harvard, but it just shows a lot of dedication, shows a lot of, somebody really applying themselves in their high school time, even maybe before high school. And, their students do a lot of great things there. So Ananth is interested in tech, entrepreneurship, and he also enjoys blogging about this, which to me is really cool. I think that blogs, personal blogs especially, are a good way to express yourself, and takes a lot of courage to do it. He was the co-founder of Rally, which empowers local political campaigns by connecting them with the people and the resources they need to succeed. He was the founder of Extemper's Bible, which is an organization dedicated to teaching the extemporaneous speaking community, and we'll hear more about that. He was a National Merit finalist, NSDA US Extemporaneous Speaking National Finalist, and an NCFL Extemporaneous Speaking National Champion. Ananth, you've got a lot under your belt. I'm super excited to dig in. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really looking forward to this one.
Pleasure's all mine. It's great to be here, and you've been doing a lot of cool work with this, so excited to do this.
Heck yeah. Well, let's get into it. So congrats on getting into Stanford. That's the big thing. We're going to get into that a little bit, but I want to talk about your experiences leading up to it first, because, it's got this mystique to it. Like, this guy got into Stanford. Oh my goodness. But let's uncover that. Let's see what was under the hood, and, inspire others that maybe want to do the same. So you were the co-founder of Rally. Tell us about Rally. What is Rally?
So a little bit of background. We weren't actually what we are today. The idea came about a month into the pandemic. My brother, he was delayed indefinitely from returning back to college. Likewise, I was, going through it with online school. So at that point, we both came to the sobering conclusion that this pandemic was probably going to continue for another few months, not another few years. And while that also results in inexpressible human tragedy, it opens up a few opportunities and undeniably changes some industries. From my brother's perspective, I think the biggest way and the most immediate way that the pandemic affected him was his internships got canceled. And a lot of his friends did as well, because, a lot of big companies and employers lack the wherewithal, both financially and in terms of, health resources to sustain interns at in-person locations. And for me, I'm someone who's pretty into politics. I was wondering how, in arguably the most momentous election we were having, the 2020 election, which both mattered at the national level, the state level, and the local level, how is the pandemic going to affect things? So our original idea, and we later approached actually my speech coach about it because he's had experience with politics as well, was what if there was some type of way to connect college-age students who need an internship now that their plans were foiled with political campaigns that, need more bodies. They need armies of volunteers and interns who can help them phone bank, canvas, etc. So that was the original idea. And it kind of stalled out, not going to lie. In June.
What do you mean stalled out? What do you mean stalled out?
So yeah. In June, we were just approaching college students at that point. And for 2 weeks, we only had 9 signups. So clearly there wasn't exactly a lot of interest in internships from the college perspective. So, out of curiosity,
seems backwards because of all the problems that your brother and yourself were kind of dealing with.
Yeah. That's why I was kind of curious about that, right? I guess for a lot of college students, the work that campaigns need to have done is different than the work they were expecting, like the college students themselves were expecting to be done, because it's kind of menial work. Calling multiple people who are angry and adversarial can be a little bit tedious. So I wanted to talk to some high school friends. I was like, hey, you interested in this idea? It'd be pretty cool. They're like, hell yeah, I'll try this out. So got a few high school friends to sign up. And in 3 days alone, we had more signups from just high school friends than we had from all of that. So for the next few months, we just exclusively approached high schoolers. We used to have a social media account. We took it down, but we actually got about 400 signups from various high schoolers. And our goal was to charge $50 a pop, target campaigns, particularly at the national level, and, get them to sign up for this platform. Few misconceptions that, we've since realized, and that's why we pivoted. The first is that volunteers, someone might say one thing and do something very different. And so we noticed this huge attrition rate. A lot of people who were signing up for these political campaigns weren't exactly following through on their promises. And that left a lot of angry people managing these campaigns. They're like, hey, I paid $50 for a volunteer who helped me once or twice. That's not exactly what I paid for.
Right.
So we had to do a lot of refunds, a lot of angry, management, that type of stuff. Number two was the fact that, well, this wasn't exactly a service that national campaigns were particularly interested in. The national political level is a lot more established. And so they're not exactly going to trust a bunch of high schoolers and college students with thousands of dollars potentially. So we had to focus more on local political campaigns, and that ended up benefiting us. And throughout all of this process, we also realized just how messed up the entire world of political campaigning is. It is a very partisan affair. It is a very expensive affair. And it means that many people who are trying to run honest, nonpartisan campaigns often struggle. So that's where we started to pivot toward the new idea, which was, is there some type of way where we can help campaigns, particularly local campaigns, and provide them with unequivocal nonpartisan support so they can win their elections?
When you're saying, and I want to pause real quick, there's a lot of partisan approach. There's a big, kind of bias that they're taking in terms of running their campaigns. Are you saying the people that are helping fund their campaigns? Are you saying the party or the candidate themselves? Where is that partisanship coming in explicitly?
So I would say it's coming in from two sources. The first is, at the institutional level. To run a campaign, you're going to need an army of people to help you, and you're also going to need funds, right? Mm-hmm. The way that people get those funds is through parties who oftentimes have strings attached. It's like, I scratch my back, or your back, you scratch mine. So right. That saying extends in politics. And the other thing has always been, with these campaigns, you need some type of digital field organizing service. That was an approach popularized in 2008 with David Axelrod and the Obama campaign. We've seen a lot of big data in healthcare and those industries. Big data is also king in elections. But the problem is that to access these huge voter rolls, to have these predictive models, you've had to work with a party directly. So the Democrats, they have this software called NGP-Van, incredibly clunky, hard to use, and let's face it, also partisan. And to fundraise with something like NGP-Van, 4.5% of all the money you field goes directly to the Democratic National Committee. Mm. On the Republican side, there's nothing that expressly partisan, but unofficially, there's services like Vote Builder and Nation Builder. These services on the right, where like the board of directors and stuff like that are almost exclusively Republicans. So even if in theory they're nonpartisan, in practice, it's been anything but that.
I understand. Gotcha. So this is what you noticed. You noticed this partisanship, and you're working at the local level. So let's go back into the story then, kind of around your pivot. Where did we leave off there?
Sure. So it actually started when one of our other co-founders, Tanner Jones. So brief context about him. He was actually a field organizer for Andrew Yang in New Hampshire because he goes to school at Dartmouth. And obviously Yang lost, but he had a lot of experience with that, and we thought that could be useful. He was telling us about all of the hassles of field organizing and how it's very expensive. And he was also telling us about how much he got paid. We're talking a few $1,000, which isn't exactly chump change. That's a pretty big deal. And for local campaigns where you're running on a tight budget of maybe $50,000, if that's a lot of money that's eating into your overall expenses. Right. So that was an understanding that was front and center. And so when we started to work with these local campaigns, we started hearing that complaint over and over again. So we try to listen, as we worked with campaigns and meet them at their needs. So the first year, 2020, obviously we couldn't have pivoted that quickly towards software, but we were still trying to provide a lot of those nonpartisan services. So we're directly on the phone, calling with people, telling them about, here's how you can raise more money. Here's how you can prep for interviews or debates. Here's how you can get an army of volunteers. Here's how you can identify your vote number, all of that different stuff. And so we were reading up on this literature. It was kind of nice because Paul Wellstone, he was a former senator from Minnesota, tragically died in a plane crash. But he used to lead the seminar at the University of Minnesota about the art of politicking and campaigning. So there was so much literature out there that we could access and that we try to utilize. By the winter of 2020, the early parts of 2021, we wanted to invest more heavily into the infrastructure to build out a software. And so we started to work on that and create some type of project around that. we met with this guy named Cole Rudick. We actually hired off of Upstart, which is this platform for independent consultants. Paid him a few $1,000 and we got our MVP, or minimum viable product, out there a few months after that. And then we just continually iterated upon that. We worked with candidates like Dario Anselmo, to people like Allison Alter, these from places like, Minnesota all the way to Austin, Texas. And so we just continually iterated and worked on the business, and, campaigns found that service helpful. And so we just added that as a complementary service onto our existing services and our own consultancy.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. And you're still working on Rally, correct?
Yeah. We're working on Rally. I did meet actually with the founders about a week ago. There is a chance that, with the 2022 season, because we're all like, my brother's off to business school, Tanner is off to law school, and, I'm starting undergrad, that we might just take our profits and just do stuff with it. I've been thinking about it. If that's the case, I was hoping that I would take about half my share of the profits, invest that in a college, and the other half, because Stanford is a very entrepreneurial school, maybe I can invest in a few companies here and there for pieces of equity. So I think that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that sounds like you've got a couple of options at your disposal. And I really love the way that you guys were able to find a way to generate income before having to build a product. I think that's a really important thing that a lot of founders run into. Even myself, I've, run into that issue where here we are trying to develop a product before we have, no coded a solution. So for you guys to do that and then create a complementary service, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, good deal. Well, I'm excited to see where that takes you. I'm excited to see where that's going. And I want to touch now into Extemper's Bible. So this was one thing that I found really unique about you, is your involvement in public speaking competitions. That to me is unique because you don't hear a lot of, or at least I don't hear a lot of people that are involved in that. So talk to us about the Extemper's Bible. How did this start for you? What gave you this idea?
So I've been involved in speech since 8th grade.
Wow.
And I wanted to do something that, would help me become a better public speaker, teach me how to research things effectively, work with the team and whatever, all of that stuff. The nice thing about speech is that it teaches you how to learn, not just like, it doesn't just let you learn, it teaches you the art of learning itself. So how can I acquire information rapidly? Then more importantly, find some type of way to re-articulate that information in a way that's even more digestible. Take this complex report that's maybe a few thousand words long and compress it into something that's only a few hundred, if not a few dozen words long. So I've really appreciated that aspect of this activity. But, for all of its glory, speech and debate can sometimes be a deeply inequitable activity. And in the early part of my speech career, until my junior year, I didn't exactly have much coaching support or anything like that. Our coach actually got fired because of all of the complications there. And I recognized that this was an issue other competitors were facing. They told me about it themselves. And so I wanted to see if there was some type of way to, really help people. And that belief was reified by the pandemic, which only entrenched these educational disparities even more. So the Extemper's Bible is a national organization where we're just trying to curate and present all of these resources you need to start a team and to lead your own practices. That includes articles and weekly questions on our website, interviews and strategy sessions on our podcast. And, we're trying to do various camps and stuff that we do over the summer to just help people get on their feet and start speaking. And so throughout the years, we've been able to reach, a few thousand people through that. And it's just something that personally, I just like to do. It's a big passion of mine.
Yeah, no, definitely. And are you focusing what age group, which demographic are you looking at?
Predominantly high school students, a few middle schoolers. The speech and debate community is typically people from that 8th grade range through that 12th grade range.
Gotcha. Does it carry on to college, this type of practice?
For some people, yeah. Schools like Stanford, they don't offer any type of speech team, which was kind of a bummer for me.
Yeah.
But some other schools are really into it. And like a good example is Northwestern is into it, Western Kentucky University, Bradley College, all types of universities are pretty big into speech and debate, even at the college level.
That's funny. You'd think Stanford has it all. You'd think for sure they'd have that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So how long has this been going for now, the Extemper's Bible?
So started in March of 2020. It's been going on then for little over 2 years now at this point.
So you were able to start this at the same time as you were able to start Rally.
Yeah. Well, the
And
nice
you were
news
in school.
was, yeah.
How did that fare? How were you able to manage everything?
So I think a big part of it is delegation. And I think that's something that a lot of high schoolers should really try to take into account, because you honestly can't do everything yourself. Part of it is you have to identify a smart team of people that are capable and build out that soft core, that soft strategy, so to speak. Who are the people that can be good leaders, who have that self-motivation and can help you scale whatever you're trying to grow? So for me, with the Extemper's Bible, for example, I was fortunate enough to have found a few friends who are really into it as well, the speech community, and are willing to help out. And then obviously with Rally, I had my closest confidant and my brother and my old speech captain, Tanner Jones. And, we were able to steer the ship that way. So that was one part of it. The other part was, for all of the problems that online school had, the one nice thing was that it afforded you more free time. So it definitely helped with that as well. So I'd say it was a mix of those two.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. I love that because it can be overwhelming. Definitely. Can definitely be overwhelming.
100%. Yeah.
I barely had time. I remember just baseball practice would get in the way between baseball training and then AP classes, and you're just like, it's already 9:30, and I've got to wake up early to get going. I mean, balancing is great. I'm glad that you were able to find that, and sounds like find the positive as well in the online school. So more on the Extemper's Bible, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced, whether it be community building, whether it be getting it just launched in general, the product itself, the services, the team? What have been some of the big challenges you've run into?
I would say for me, the big thing was community building. With the early days, this was 10th grade. So I wasn't exactly at the same level nationally as I am today. So few people knew of me here and there, but obviously I didn't have the same connections that I've made over the past few years, just meeting people on the circuit. So in the early days when I had to scale the Extemper's Bible, I remember I'd literally scroll through the various tournament results on this website called tabroom.com, and on this other website called speechwire.com. That's where they post the results to speech tournaments. I'd literally see contestants' names. I'd go onto Instagram. Sometimes they'd have the high school in their bio, or sometimes they'd have mutuals or something. I'd request to follow each and every single one of them. A few times I even got temporarily blocked from doing so from Instagram because of it. So I've since learned you have to do about 50 an hour before any type of action before Instagram blocks you, which is kind of nice to know now, but I had to do that. And then, I'd had to unfollow the people that didn't follow back to make sure that ratio was prime to the point. Then I'd go on Reddit. There's these various sub-communities. Reddit is this place of just all types of communities. And one of the communities is r/debate. It has over 50,000 members. I'm sure not a lot of them are active, but at least a few hundred are, weekly active users on r/debate. And so I posted some stuff there. And over time, it started to cascade and grow. And I think one of the most useful things that can validate any idea is when you have organic growth. And I was fortunate enough to have that because, when we were talking about the immediate social circle, best case for me, I'd reached out to maybe a few hundred people, but gradually it just spread through word of mouth. And soon people who I didn't know, knew me, hey, you're the Extemper's Bible guy. I'm like, yeah, and it was kind of cool. And so people were interested in joining the project, which also helped, and soon you started having a team from all over. I had people from California all the way to North Carolina to, the frigid cold that is Minnesota. And so you're able to make connections that way and make inroads into those states.
Definitely. And what was your product like around those initial posts in that Reddit community as you're trying to drive more engagement? What was your community building process like, or even what was your product like at that point? Was it a website or was it what did it look like?
So at that point, there were two things. We actually didn't get to the website until July of 2020. At this point, I'm a 10th grader, don't even have my own credit card or debit card. And so that I literally had to Venmo people for that, or get Venmo money to even start the website. So at that point, it was the podcast, using anchor.com, actually getting that up and just promoting that. And then number two was these various camps that I try to promote, and it was like, hey, here's this free Extemp session. It's going to be hosted by me, or sometimes it'd be hosted by a close friend, something like that. Then a few months later, we built out the website and we started promoting that as a place where there were weekly questions, there were interviews we posted, topic briefings about various contemporary affairs, and, just meta pieces about the strategy of public speaking, how you can employ hand gestures, how you can own the room when you speak, your body language, all of those different things, and how exactly you can try to master, I recognize that maybe is a wrong term to use, but just, I guess, at least approach something close to mastery of public speaking.
Right. Wow. That's awesome. Well, I think it's, again, a beautiful example of beautiful execution of iterating slowly, building that community, gaining the traction. I'm inspired by that. I think that that's wonderful. You're able to do that so efficiently. So let's talk now about your awards, because these are no small deal. These are some huge awards. You were an NSDA US extemporaneous speaking national finalist and an NCFL extemporaneous speaking national champion. For those of us that don't know about what it's like to compete in a, debate contest or speech contest, tell us about what type of, because I know they have Lincoln Douglas, they've got, that's probably the one I can name, but they've got all sorts of different types of events. Tell us about your event, and walk us through what that would look like.
So extemporaneous speaking is a limited preparation event. So I have 3 various questions. I don't know what they're going to be. I'm given them 30 minutes before I'm supposed to speak. And they're all types of questions. Maybe it's, can Tunisian democracy survive Kair al-Said's presidency? Or a question like, will the Federal Reserve raise interest rates? They cover both international and, American issues. And then I pick my favorite one. I put the other 2 back in the envelope, and I have 30 minutes to prep a speech, memorize the speech, and deliver it. It should be about 7 minutes long. And so all types of subjects, and you just try to make sure you're well-versed in the news, or at the very least, have types of ways of acquiring information quickly. So if it's a subject you're speaking about you don't know much about, how exactly can you learn as much as possible, in a compressed window, and then speak that out.
So you're saying to prep for that, it would be a lot of news reading. You're trying to cover as many topics as you possibly can. When you get those 3 questions, maybe pick one that you're most favorable towards in the sense of preparedness. And then after that, okay, let me delve into this. When that 30 minutes comes, that window starts, are you allowed access to the internet, or what kind of, insights can you garner, and from where?
In my very first season and my second season of Extemp, not allowed access to the internet. Read 100+ articles every single week, save them as PDFs, and just store them on my computer so I could just access all of them. Today now you're allowed to use the internet, which is nice, because obviously you don't want people like making up sources or statistics or anything like that.
Right.
So it's like you still need to know the news well enough, because you're not exactly going to be anything close to an expert on the subject in 30 minutes. But this way, I need to quickly access a statistic, and I want to make sure that it's falsifiable and absolutely 100% true, then I could do it that way.
Definitely. So, and in respect to these speeches, how are they ranked? Or, you're competing against other people. How many other people are there? And then how do they say this person was performing better than that person? What does that metric look like?
So in any given round, there are 6 people, and it's kind of like golf, where the lower the score, the better. So 1 means you were the best person in the round. You deserved the first place award. 6 means you were the worst person in the round. You deserve 6th place. At speech tournaments, you have various different sections of 6-person rounds, right? And then over the course of maybe 3 to 5 rounds, you'll have a total cumulative rank from your preliminary rounds. So maybe I got a 1 in one of my rounds, a 2 in another one of my rounds, a 4 in another round. All that adds up to one big number. And that's compared against the dozens, if not hundreds of other competitors at the tournament to give you a preliminary ranking. So let's say there are 300 competitors at a tournament, and the top 64 break to what's called out rounds, your quarterfinal round, whatever. If I have a cum of, let's say, 8, then I can break to those out rounds. And so I'm compared directly against those other people. And then from there, you're repeating the process. You go from quarterfinals, you half that, you get to semifinals, you half that, you get to finals. And so that's typically how, I guess, awards are handed out. In terms of judging, it's to each their own, I suppose. And For some people, it's really about your delivery and your way to be engaging and dynamic. For others, it's about your digestibility. No one wants to have a show off. They want to have someone who knows their stuff, but obviously can explain it in a way that's accessible to any single person. And for some people, it's just about the content. They want that analytical brain, and they're fine if it's less digestible. But the best extempers are people that master all of those categories. They find a way to be engaging, dynamic, humorous, witty, but also have that good and informative content that really leaves someone feeling motivated and informed. And, someone who could, at the dinner table, share this information with a friend and be like, hey, I learned this today.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, I can see your passion in this, obviously being an extemper, but what about this type of speech event, captivated you more so than the others, and even on the debate side of things?
So I do LD debate, and I was actually pretty into it. Then I got to the national circuit. National circuit, you have people speaking at 400 words per minute about like critical race theory and stuff like that. I was like, no, this is not my jam. So yeah, that's when I really started to focus on extem speaking. I think that there are two big benefits that extem speaking gets you over other events. The first is that obviously you're speaking about so many issues and extemporaneously at that. In the debate world, you have one topic that you're researching for 2 months. And so maybe you get a lot of in-depth knowledge about it, but you're not exactly getting that breadth of information.
Gotcha.
In extemper, you're always kept on your toes. You always have to keep up with the news. And not only does that force you to be a better public speaker, it also means that you're just so knowledgeable about all kinds of events. And the other thing too is, these debate events, you have one constructive after another, and it's just like these things where you're getting caught up in the technicalities, these rebuttals. It's like, oh, they dropped this one argument, which I'm going to hyperextend, that has nothing to do with real world reality. Extem speaking, it's much more grounded in persuasion, not winning off of technicalities, but winning because you are truly persuasive. And there are a few activities, if any, where you have the unadulterated attention of a room full of 30-year-olds and teachers and these types of people who their opinion genuinely has real world implications, especially as a high schooler. So it's so special when you actually have the opportunity to speak in front of one adult, needless to say, potentially a few dozen, and change their minds.
Wow. I love that. That's a brilliant answer. That's wonderful. Well, I wish I had done some more speaking in my high school time. I think that I missed out on a lot just talking to you. Good Lord. That's awesome. You were able to enjoy that. So we're going to take a quick break and then we'll jump right back into this. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right. So we're going to kick this back off with Stanford, and we're going to talk about your studying there in the fall. Tell us about what you're going to be studying there in the fall.
I'm pretty interested in the Stanford specific major called symbolic systems. It combines computer science, philosophy, linguistics, and psychology. I think that'd be really cool to study because it combines, both the technical side of things with some of that more social science, humanities-oriented approach. I think that's very useful in thinking about how humans interact with computers, what it means to build out a responsible artificial intelligence, and all of these other questions that combine both technological and moral quandaries, I guess, or quandaries.
Definitely. No, I think that's a great major. Obviously we talked a little bit about this before, but just the ability to look at that, cross-disciplinary approach to find, the maximum impact on not only the computer science side, but the philosophy side, because there is a lot of disconnect between the two. If you're just shot into industry and you haven't been versed on one or the other, that's great that you're going to be going into that program. And you also said that you are considering economics potentially if the symbolic systems doesn't work out, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I think economics is a cool major as well. So we'll try symbolic systems. If I don't like it, then we'll try economics and hope for something better.
I love it. I love it. Well, what are you most looking forward to during your time at Stanford?
Well, we're talking about this. I'm pretty hopeful that Stanford can offer a lot in the name of entrepreneurship. I know that so much of Silicon Valley was built out of Berkeley and Stanford, and I'm hoping to take full advantage of that entrepreneurial culture, maybe meet a co-founder and start a business and get that growing.
So here's a good question for you. In terms of businesses, I guess, you have two that you're currently working at. You're considering perhaps putting pause on one, taking the profits, investing in something else.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of finding new ideas, Where do you think that you'd go for that? Would it be more along the lines of what you've already done? Would it be in something completely different? Or your eyes wide open? What does that look like for you in your head?
I'm trying to keep all doors open. So I actually have this thing on my notebook, like my notepad, just a list of hundreds of business ideas that I've just collected from reading, just like random shower thoughts, all of that. So I have ideas, that I'm pretty excited to potentially pursue. And we'll just see which one's obviously the most viable to create as a college student, but also has that profitability potential.
Definitely. No, I love that. I love that. Keep the options open. I think that was one of the things about me getting onto campus when I was a freshman was I think I switched my major about 4 times in the first year, or at least what I thought my major was going to be. Obviously, kind of kept the decision tree open, but just from the different departments I was interacting with and the different students from different departments, you just find yourself, you know, completely exposed to a new way of thought that you hadn't. So good for you keeping it open. I think that's brilliant. And the thing that I want to ask next is about nerves. Obviously, you're in a new situation, you're traveling across the country, new people, new opportunities. Is there anything that makes you a little bit nervous or you have uncertainties about?
I'm trying not to be super nervous about stuff. I think it'll be a nice opportunity and I'm excited to take advantage of it. But obviously, you have very successful people at Stanford University, like Eileen Gu, she won freaking Olympic gold medals. I think that's so cool.
That is really cool.
Um,
Shout out
so that
Eileen.
makes me, yeah, exactly. Makes me a little bit nervous, but I honestly am kind of excited about that too. Because I think when you are surrounded by these very motivated people, it compels you to be better yourself and to push for self-excellence, right? If you're like basically the byproduct of your environment. And so if you surround yourself then with successful people and motivated people, I'm hopeful that some of that can, rub off on me and I can try to do the same as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that you hit it on the head there. It's kind of like the old saying, you're the average of your 5 closest friends.
Mhm.
Yeah, gosh, you're going to be in such a cool environment. I'm living vicariously through you. This is wonderful. Were there any other schools besides Stanford that you were considering between choosing?
So in terms of applying, I was considering, Harvard and Yale. Yale was actually like my dream school before Stanford, but I got really into entrepreneurship over quarantine. I started, reading books. I guess I won't spoil that now, the book I read, but my favorite book. But just like reading some of those entrepreneurial books, watching videos from Y Combinator, all of that. So, I started to throw Yale out of the picture a little bit. Harvard, it was somewhat of a tough choice, but I was like, Stanford's a more entrepreneurial Harvard with better weather. So I'm like, well, we'll do Stanford. And so
I love it.
luckily I got in restrictive early action to Stanford. And I was like, I could apply to other schools, but this is my senior year. I'm trying to chill, trying to enjoy my senior year.
Right.
And I don't think I would choose any of them over Stanford. So I was like, I'll call it a day there.
All the day there. I love it. So restrictive early action, you're still able to apply to other schools. It's just that
So
you're only able to apply to that school early. Is that what restrictive early action is?
yeah, exactly. And even more of a nuanced distinction, it's you're only allowed to apply to that private school early. So if I wanted to, and I did, like I applied to, my state school, the University of Minnesota, just to have as like a nice fallback option. And so, yeah, just like I guess to any applicants that are listening, you can still apply to other public schools that are some very great institutions. The UCs come to mind, UNC Chapel Hill. You can apply to all of them if you want to, save yourself some of that hassle. And then it depends if you're applying to Harvard, Stanford, or some of these other REA schools. But I know for Stanford specifically, you can also apply to private schools that are offering scholarships early because they have earlier deadlines. I ended up rescinding, these scholarships once I got into Stanford because I didn't want to take someone else's spot potentially. But, USC was an example of one I applied to. Vanderbilt had some scholarships. So, yeah.
Definitely. So I want to ask you a really quick interjection here. With all the schools that you were considering, how confident were you in terms of, getting accepted into a school such as Stanford? A lot of kids, young students, they're they're not sure. It's kind of like, hey, I'll throw my arms up and apply. Some are thinking, I've got a pretty dang good shot at that. What was your, position on that spectrum of pretty confident to, hey, I don't even know?
Somewhere right in the middle, I would say. I recognize that it's a selective school, but I also recognize that I try to do everything I could, and that it came from a place of passion, and the potential boost to the resume was like a convenient, I guess, added benefit.
Right.
So I would suppose that if you are someone that maybe feels a little bit nervous, genuinely do stuff that you're passionate about. Worst case, you get rejected from a school that you really wanted to go to, but you can't look back and have regrets. You still did something you're passionate about and enjoyed. Best case, you get into your dream school and you did something you're passionate about. So yeah,
I love
guess that'd
that.
be my theory.
No, that's a great theory. And from all the people I've spoken with that have gotten to excellent schools, I mean, like you said, it was a byproduct. It was a byproduct of their passion, and the resume wasn't top of mind. It wasn't about the application process. It was about, I want to do something that I truly feel I can make an impact in. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I wish I had this discussion when I was a freshman. But nonetheless, what do you wish you knew before this college application process?
Two things I'd say. First, that it's really not that deep. And, I think for a lot of people, there's just all of this unnecessary stress. Like, you're going to end up at an institution that's meant to be. You throw a bunch of crap at the wall, something's bound to stick. And so, regardless of the school you end up at, you truly are going to have a great time. I know like a lot of friends who applied to one school and they had just that school in mind, and then something didn't go their way. They caught an unlucky break there, but then they caught a lucky break someplace else, and they're really happy to go to that school. So I know people hear that all the time, and it's a tired thing. I heard it when I was a junior. I'm like, oh, shut up. But honestly, it is so true. So really, don't try to stress out about it too much. Enjoy the process. And number two, this is for more people in like the early stages of high school. If you'll entertain this analogy for a bit, I'd like say that your extracurriculars are a lot like turtles. Turtles hatch hundreds of eggs along the beach. Now, a lot of those turtle eggs, when they hatch, they're eaten up by predators on the beach. A very small portion make it to the ocean. And then when they do, they're such tiny sizes that they're in threat of a predator at all the time until they grow to a much greater size. So you start with a few hundred eggs, and by the end of it, maybe you have a few dozen, if that are actually fully grown turtles. But that's enough to repopulate and even further grow the population. And I'd say that pursuing extracurriculars and activities is a lot like that. You're just going to plant a lot of different eggs along the beach, so to speak. And you do that with the recognition that you're not actually going to follow through on a lot of them. But hopefully you find those 1 to 2 passions that you really stick with and just try to go as deep as possible into those areas you can. If you're into journalism, pursue journalistic activities, and that doesn't just have to be an internship. I know a lot of people have a fixation with internships, but you can do your own self-directed projects. If you're into entrepreneurship, start your own company, bias toward action. So just try to find all of these cool things that you're interested in, whittle it down to a few by your sophomore year, and then bias toward action and try to do these self-directed projects, internships, wherever you can to stand out and really pursue your passion.
I love that. That's brilliant. That's so great. Well, we're going to close this out now with the rapid fire rounds. We're going to get your quick take on a couple of these questions, which I know you've gotten the chance to look over. So the first one, favorite book, what is it?
So this is the one I wanted to avoid spoiling earlier on. 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. It's a pretty short book, under 200 pages. Originally was a Stanford lecture actually done at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. This guy named Blake Masters took very detailed notes on the book. And this venture capitalist, founder of actually PayPal, original founder of PayPal, started his own fund, whatever. It's named Peter Thiel.
1517 fund, yep.
Yep, yeah. And he was really into it. So decided to write a book on it. Really great book.
So that's your favorite book. Okay, well, wonderful. Next question, favorite teacher and favorite grade?
Favorite grade, I guess, I don't know. I'll give a shout out to my senior year. Obviously, I think there's a little bit of bias toward that. Favorite teacher, I'll say Mr. Lenz, my stats teacher from 9th grade. He was just a great math teacher, got me really into, just thinking about things in new and creative ways. He was always great to just have a general conversation with about any type of subject. Plus, he was a really interesting dude.
Love it. I love it. What has been the most stressful part of being a student day in and day out?
I would say sometimes you're just like slammed with homework and you have so many assignments due over the weekend. But again, it's really not that deep in the grand scheme of things. If you communicate with teachers well, you try to plan out things well, you can hopefully get it done.
Totally. Who is the favorite who is a favorite person that you have liked to study with?
I'll be completely honest, not a huge fan of studying with other people because I sometimes get a little bit distracted. But if I had to say, I'd say my mom actually.
Really?
Sometimes she has to take these like psychiatry, I don't know what they're called, but just like for her boards and stuff like that. So she'll be reading up on that, and I'll just be studying next to her, and that can be pretty fun.
That's cool. That's really cool. What is the most meaningful way for students to help each other?
Um, I would say just try to communicate with one another and just help each other through assignments. I think what you're doing with Thought Cloud is really cool. Unofficially, I think that's what I've been trying to do over the past few years. But right now, it's just like this disjointed patchwork of group chats and stuff on GroupMe, iMessage, or just having some type of centralized way to communicate with others. It's a really neat idea. And I think for anyone, just try to do that. Find that consistent group of people you can study with. And when you're confused on something, just look to them.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. What is your biggest hope to accomplish during your time on Earth?
It's kind of lofty, but I'm hoping to be a billionaire.
I love it. No, that's perfect. Shoot for it.
Yeah. And more than that, beyond the money, I just hope that the way that I get there is by genuinely creating some type of service or product that people find societally valuable and impactful. And I'm hoping that I can avoid any type of midlife crisis. So by the time I'm 40 or 50, I look back and I'm like, I don't have any regrets.
I love that. That's wonderful. No, if you can't say it out loud, then I mean, hey, there's no point in even going for it. So
Exactly.
no, perfect. Top piece of advice for those who are early in their educational journey. You've been full of advice this whole time, but what is one little nugget that you might be able to dish out?
So beyond the stuff that I've already been talking about, um, I got to think about this, but I guess I'll say um, the thing that you were talking about earlier, you're the average of the five closest friends that you have. I think that's definitely true. And part of it is just surrounding yourself out with the right crowd. I know people, cheesy as it sounds, back in middle school, were very smart and they just hung out with the wrong people. And so they ended up just going down a bad path. So if you can, try to find friends that are people that'll genuinely be happy for you when you accomplish stuff and people that are motivated academically. And in the process, you'll notice some of that starts to wash off on you and you'll become a better student and a better person as well.
I love that. So, Ananth, where can people follow you, the work that you're doing, keep up with you, and just kind of learn more about you as a person?
So I have my own website. I'm trying to, blog on it and just keep people updated there. And hopefully it'll start looking nicer as I get more programming background on my belt. But it's called ananthveluvali.com. That's ANANTH, V as in Victor, ELU, V as in Victor, ALI.com. And so you can check out some of the stuff there.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. It's been a pleasure having you on. I'm so happy you were able to be a guest. And again, thank you so much. You're always welcome back. We're definitely going to do another one of these later as you get done through your undergraduate journey. So, Anand, thank you so much.
Definitely down. Thanks for doing this interview. And, these are some great questions and I wish you all the best. Everyone, check out Thought Cloud. It's a really cool thing.
I appreciate it. Well, I'll talk to you soon.